everyone. Welcome to another episode of Relationships and Reason with your host, Sophia.
Hello.
And Jermaine. Malcolm. Hey, today we want to talk about something that I think is really cool. The first 2 years of marriage.
Yes, and dun dun dun, when the honeymoon phase ends or ended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For many of you, the honeymoon phase might not have worn out in the first 2 years. Perhaps you're still going through the honeymoon phases, but when you are in the trenches and you are going deep, the honeymoon phase wears out really quickly. And so we were in the trenches for a good amount of time.
But... Yeah. And, we on last episode, we talked about the things that we learn in marriage counseling and how, to apply them in your marriage. And, when you're in the honeymoon phase, you think that, I'll never, ever have to use those things because, love is going to take us to eternity. Love is going to pay all the bills and love is going to do everything until the honeymoon phase ends and you realize there's a lot to this marriage thing that is going to take wisdom and patience and understanding and not love.
But yeah, in the first 2 years too, I think we should say the first 3 years, because even in the first 2 years, there's still a lot of just butterflies and happiness and love.
Okay, there you go with that word.
A lot of fun. And so you're still having a good time, and I think there's lots of things you still kind of not cross over, but it's not a big deal. It doesn't seem like a big deal, right? Until maybe even years 3 and 4.
Oh, for you? This is not for a lot of people, Jermaine. He's speaking from his own personal experience, so that's great. That's great to know.
Okay.
Yeah. For the regular people like me, within the first 6 months, you're like, oh wow, this is interesting. I won't say 6 months. I'm pushing it a little bit there, but okay. The first 2 years, you said 3, I say 2.
Okay.
First 2 years of marriage.
Yeah. So, let's talk about even bringing some of those things that we learned during our marriage counseling and our premarital counseling and coming in. What were, maybe some things that kind of, hit you by surprise, let's say.
Within the first 2 years of figuring out living with you and, Okay, so Jermaine and I did not live together whenever we were dating and before marriage. So, when we first started living together, again, within that first few months, it's just like, oh, yay, this is awesome. I have somebody to be with me every night and, that person that you're going to come home to. But, if you're used to living by yourself, after a while, you're like, wait, I kind of need my space a little bit, So that in itself is an adjustment. Obviously, you want the person around, but at the same time, there's you at time would probably miss your space,
right?
Of just you want to come home and be quiet. You don't want to talk to anybody. Those little things, and you have to realize you have to say to yourself, okay, this is what I wanted. I wanted to be in a relationship. I wanted to have someone. You remember when you were single and you were lonely and you wish somebody was there, and now you have someone there, and then you're like, no, get away from my space. So those are just different dynamics that you gotta figure out. And it seems simple and silly, but it's a thing that that we all gotta think about and process. And this is part of that first few months of living together.
Yeah, I was thinking about where, I was living before. I was downtown, Broadway, San Antonio. I was really enjoying my little bachelor apartment. And I was thinking about it. All I had in that apartment was a couch and a bed. And I didn't have any TV. So I came home. When I came home, it was pretty much for sleep, right? When I came home from work or whatnot. And so I kind of enjoyed that a lot. You already
You
had-
enjoyed your peace and quiet.
I enjoyed my peace and quiet. You already had a home. You also had an established career, right? You were coming from, for me, it was like I was just starting my career. I just, not too long ago, graduated from college, but also getting into directing a local nonprofit organization. And so it feels like, there was a lot of excitement for it. And you being a ball player, really a veteran in the game at that time, which is a very interesting dynamic, right? You were on the cusp of retiring. Here I am.
think what Jermaine is trying to say is that I'm so much older than he is.
No,
really.
you're
He's
4
like,
years
I
older.
just graduated from college.
You're 4 years
You're a
older.
veteran in the league. You have been around the block a long time.
No,
And
that's
here
not,
I come. You stole me out of college.
that's
my
not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you, like, just career dynamics were very different. And
Okay.
so it was really interesting. I was, super excited about, jumping out there, learning from, this organization, but also getting ready to start building my own thing. And you were getting into that, next stage of your career. And so that in itself is a real interesting dynamic that we had to kind of walk together with each other. And, I think about that for most people coming together, different stages of life, maybe different stories, different backgrounds. And so now you're bringing that into one home under one roof, and then you're trying to balance out all of that.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point because, again, when you get married, you're in love, right? And different, you just see that person and you're like, oh my gosh, I love that person, But like you mentioned, two people are coming from different backgrounds, and not just family backgrounds and culture, but in the stages and phases of life that they're in, whether even if people are just, graduated college and they're just both coming out of college at the same time, you're still coming out of different dynamics. And especially when you're older, it can be even more challenging when you figure out like the different spaces that you're in your life and trying to work together as a unit, as one on the one household, and trying to, figure out like if you move into somebody else's. This is a pretty interesting topic too, because if you are, when you first get married and you move into a home that's already established by the husband or the wife, then it's like this person is coming into your things.
Yeah.
It's like, don't touch my things. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting dynamic as well, to figure out like how to work together to where the space become both of yours, and
Yeah.
not just the person before.
Yeah, really good point. And I absolutely appreciated that. You did not move into my 1-bedroom apartment. We moved into the home you already had, but at no point did I feel like I was coming into just your space, and that was good. Now, I will say that I'm not a very picky person, so I'm not going to come in here and be like, hey, this wall needs to be Jamaican flag, right? I'm not going to come in here and say, so I don't think you had to worry much about, changing up much of your space. And that was really, really important.
Well, you did come into 2 dogs.
That is correct. Yep. So any of you navigating, family, extended family, or these 2 dogs were like your kids.
They were like my kids. They were with me, right when I graduated college, and they were like my 2 boys.
And they weren't just regular dogs; they were Chihuahuas.
Okay. So Jermaine came in, and Jermaine tried to take their place in my life, and my Chihuahua was not having it.
Yeah.
And so they did not get along
Especially the oldest one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he just passed away.
God rest his soul.
This past this past summer, and for
17
our
years old.
yes, for our entire marriage, Jermaine and that dog did not get along. so, so that was interesting too to bring it to talk about. And Jermaine brought in a dog.
I did. A real dog.
Okay. He brought in a real dog whenever we first within the first year
Yeah.
as well. So those things, different likes, things that you want, to try to be like it's your, because those two dogs were my dog, and the dog that he brought in was his, but it became ours.
Yeah.
We also had a family member live with us within the first
Right.
year of our marriage. That was an interesting challenge.
Yeah, let's
that.
talk about like some of the family dynamics and kind of changes or shifts. And yeah, so one, that piece, we had somebody kind of come in on my side of the family, stay with us. And there were some limitations on our end, right, because of that. And I imagine a lot of people go through this phase as well, where you have somebody else that's living at home. It could be a parent, it could be, another family member that's maybe going through some hard times or whatever it is. But that does put some limits on.
Yeah,
on you.
it can put some stress on you, and it pushes you and forces you to realize, like, okay, what are you gonna be as a couple? And are you gonna allow anyone to come between your space? So I think that first couple of years is a pretty sensitive time for your marriage.
Yeah.
And obviously, when you have family members or close friends who are going through a rough time, and you don't want to leave them on the street or stranded, so you invite them into your home, but it's a very sensitive time to make sure that that you stick together as a couple, and that you don't don't allow that family member to turn you against each other.
Yeah.
Again, and that's why I said it's a sensitive time, and so you have to make sure that you find time for each other within that dynamics of having someone living with you. And we're bringing this up because we know this is everyday life, right? And this is things that you all are going through within people's first 2 years of marriage, and having to whether it's an aging parent or someone who's sick or whomever, just being mindful to be careful how that dynamic plays out.
Yeah, if there's a takeaway that I had from that time, it would really be about making sure that we understood our values and we were on the same page, and guarding our time together. Like you said, it's a sensitive time. It's an important time for you to establish who you are going to become as a unit, but then also just thinking about what's important to you. Family might be a key, a really big thing, but however you're going to handle that, it needs to be both of us, all right? You need to be both be on the same page.
Absolutely, both. The conversation always has to be very open. Even if the person, obviously if it's the other person's family member or yours, being able to share what you're thinking, what you're feeling, the emotions that you're going through, and not holding that in because you don't want to offend, the other person. So I think that's a very important time to where that communication piece of things that we learn in marriage counseling has to come into play. Because even though your heart and your intention is to help the family member or to help the friend, it can hurt your marriage. Yeah. So that's something that we have to be careful of. How did that all end? In a family member lived with us for a while, and it didn't work out. So we had to eventually ask him to leave because things were just not working out.
Yeah, and I am thinking about something you said a little bit earlier. So that communication between us, that is, I think, something we can dive into, how that all played out. I think we learned what was our preferred communication styles. We had a lot of challenges, I think, in that area. I can remember, whenever we were, I can't remember a lot of the things that we fussed about, right? Because
The things that made you so mad that you just like, oh my gosh, I can't deal with this. And then now we can't remember
I
about it.
know they were so trivial.
Yes.
But, what I do remember are some of the ways that I handled some of the disputes. And one of the things that, I had to work through and still continue to work on was my separation. Whenever we were upset, one of my, I guess, communication flaws was like, okay, I don't even want to deal with this. Let me just step aside, or let me get some time to think and just take some space. But the way that you received that was very, very different, right? It wasn't space to you. It was more of like, um what is it, like
Separation,
severing.
like disconnect, like he doesn't want to be with me at all. And that is so interesting because again, when that honeymoon phase is over and you get mad at each other and something comes about and you're like, oh my gosh, is this the person that I signed up to be with, right? And you face some challenges in adjusting how your communication style and how and what you do when there's a tough situation that has happened. And from, like Jermaine mentioned, in our first few arguments, for him, his response was to, he says, take some time. That's what he says. But and how I took it is like he did not want to be in my presence at all, and that obviously bothered me because I'm like, what are you doing? But for me, whenever he took those times and separated, he didn't just do it for a few minutes.
Days. Let me tell you, I could hold a grudge. And I look at our daughter and I say, man, she probably gets that from me.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So we like you would literally go away. But I mean, we'll be in the same house, but I think that that you were like, don't touch me, don't come near me.
Yeah.
Right? Like literally, no, it was like, I'm trying to touch you. You literally wouldn't even face your body
Watch out,
towards
man.
me.
Go shoot. Give him some space.
Oh my gosh. And so that was a learning thing for me because I was like, wait a minute. What is going on? Like, hey, let's talk about this. And we don't have to talk right at the moment, but let's not, the Bible says don't go to bed angry. And I was like, no, we're going to bed angry, Lord. Like this is not what I expected marriage to be, and that was an adjustment. I don't know if you knew that you did that until we had a full conversation about that.
Yeah, I think there were some hard conversations and some difficult conversations. And I think one of the key things that helped us early in our marriage, I can remember, apologies, right? When we did something that was offbeat, we felt like we offended each other, coming back and going through that tough struggle of like, oh man, there's no way. I don't
for
need
him.
to. I don't.
For you.
What? And you too.
Okay.
To apologize, right? And whenever we did come together and apologize, we not only wanted just to apologize, just to to float to the next thing. We wanted to understand like how we could get better. And it's in one of those conversations that you expressed some vulnerability and shared with me, how that made you feel whenever I gave you the cold shoulder.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
I like that you brought up that word vulnerability because again, in the honeymoon phase, you are vulnerable with your happy feelings. The, oh my gosh, I love you so much. I can't live without you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. That I feel like that's a space where you freely, give those words out of your mouth. But whenever there is a situation when you're upset, then or when your feelings are hurt, and or whenever you feel you know embarrassed or whatever it is,
Yeah.
that's that space, and usually, like I said, this is gonna be when the honeymoon phase is over,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's those moments of vulnerability. That's when your marriage really start building, you
Yeah.
know, because you are sharing your true emotions that you don't necessarily want anybody to see,
Yeah.
even especially your spouse,
Mm-hmm.
because there's almost like a sign of weakness there to be vulnerable about something that hurt your feelings. But it is in those times to say, for you to even think like, okay, I want to be with this person. I chose to share my life with this person. So even if I don't want to be vulnerable or say something that they did that hurt my feelings, I still should say it. I still have to say it because it's gonna be beneficial for both of us.
Yeah.
So those moments of vulnerability was hard for me at first because I'm so used to
At first. At first.
Jermaine says I'm still not that vulnerable, but I'm like, dude, I tell you everything. Maybe maybe I'm not as sappy as you want me to be, but I feel like I express my emotions
I think
still 10 years later.
that was part of the communication growth as well, and learning and understanding how we actually communicate and what are the different contexts or things that allowed us to communicate the way that we do. That was a turning point for me. I can remember a few years into our marriage when I started to, I one of the challenges that we had was like I feel like you talk a certain way to me that I don't appreciate, right? And then I also, like, I got a chance to observe like your family and your surroundings and like just St. Vincent in general. I feel like, oh, that's just how most people here communicate. It's not like she's trying to be rude or mean or anything like that, but there's just this style. And it wasn't like when you get the whole picture, you see, oh, it's not rude. It's actually, that's how, people are they gather. That's how they talk. That's how they communicate. And so that was an interesting turning point for me, actually. Did you know that? Did I tell you about that?
Yes, you did. But that's another good point to bring out, because again, in the honeymoon phase, you feel like you know everything about the person, right? And you've been around some of their family members and you've been at some gatherings, but you don't really truly learn until you're in the marriage and
Mm-hmm.
you really get to know the family members, and you really get to see the hard times that they go through within that family structure, to where you're like, oh wow, this is different.
Right.
And having now to make that conscious decision, like, okay, I'm still gonna love this person,
Yeah.
I'm still gonna choose this person. So, and understanding their family dynamics, and still being able to to still continue on with that person. I think that's one of the mind jump or the mind leap that you have to take, because you have to make up within your own mind that this is what you're going to do for this other person. And I think those things happens when the honeymoon phase is over.
That's it.
A conscious decision.
That's really important. I can remember very early on, one of my good friends, we would have D Brown, shout out D Brown. We would have these conversations. We would go to the driving range and, just have a lot of conversations as we're growing. And I remember us talking about the commitment of marriage. We've been single before, and we know all the pressures that are out there in this world to acquire or to accumulate. And especially as men, it's about like how many relationships have you had, or the types of who are you hanging out with, and it can be this sort of game and this accomplishment, but the real challenge and the beauty of marriage is to decide and to commit to that one person, no matter what you experience or you consider flaws. The real challenge and the beauty in this world is being able to commit to a person and commit to a relationship and saying, this is what I'm going to anchor into. And that was also, a beautiful, like you said, mind leap for us and for me.
Yeah, and I think that's a decision that has to be made when the honeymoon phase is over.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when the love is gone, quote unquote, not obviously not all the way, but when the butterflies are no longer there,
Mm-hmm.
it's like now you gotta love with your mind.
Yeah.
Now you gotta think about different things and figuring out like, okay, this irks me. But you have to realize, okay, do you really have to let that bother you? Is this something that you can live with? If it's not something that you can live with, okay, talk about it. But talk about it in a way that is not demeaning,
So good.
that is not gonna cause like friction. It's like, hey, I don't like when you do this particular thing, or and if it doesn't need to bother you, then don't let it bother you. It's just certain things that you got to realize. Like, okay, I can't live with this. And deciding that you're gonna continue to live, or I choose to love this person. And so if he's working too late, it's like, hey, can you come home on certain days? So it's just making compromises and on different days. And for us, we plan date nights and just do different things, because we got to talk about our love language. That could be a different topic as well when it comes to spending time with each other, and how do you receive love and how do you give love. Learning those things, again, those are things that you find out when the honeymoon phase is over. Because at first it's like touchy feely, everybody, it was like, yay, kissy kissy, but when the honeymoon phase is over, you start realizing, like, how do you receive love, and learning how does your partner give love. So those things that we had to learn about each other and find out about each other. So
Yeah, there's a lot there. What's coming up to me is something that someone said to me before we were married as well. It is, in fact, we were engaged at this time and we were getting ready to marry. And I remember it's elderly lady, and she said to me, "Hey," she was actually telling me about her marriage that did not work out, and she said, I think about it all the time, and what I am encouraging you to do is to make sure you're telling your spouse what hurts, right? If you don't do that, then they'll never know. And I think that goes into that communication. For many people, you don't talk about the hurt. You store it up and you use it to build on to something else until you build up this incredible barrier between the two of you. And now you don't have a relationship anymore. But I think it's so important for us to speak about the hurt, speak about it. And like you said, in a way that's not demeaning, finding out how to communicate to each other. That in itself is you have to like become a Jedi in understanding how to communicate to your spouse.
Goes both ways.
Right?
It goes both ways.
And it's not, sometimes I think about it and I'm like, man, this kind of feels like manipulation. But it also is like, it's so important that you know how to speak to, what is your spouse going to actually respond to in order to hear what you actually want to say. That is important, right? You're looking at me like, what have I done? What have I done that I don't know that I did because you
oh my God,
communicated to me in this way?
Like I just said, those things go both ways. You have to learn each other to where first of all, Jermaine thinks that sometimes when he's communicating to me that I don't know what he's doing.
Oh,
I'm like,
what?
I know what
figured it out.
I know what you're doing. I'm just gonna, give in to you anyway.
You have no choice.
Oh my gosh. It's so funny. But again, that's that learning each other and figuring out like, okay,
that's
this
so
is
funny.
this is what's going on. Let's just sit here like, okay, yay.
You telling me you know my
Oh
Jedi
my
mind
gosh.
tricks?
But again, that's a communication piece because you had to, you had to learn like how I receive messages, and I have to learn how you receive messages as
Yeah.
well. So that those things happen when the honeymoon phase is over, and I want to keep stressing that because the part of marriage that we glorify all the time is like everything is just so shiny and beautiful, right? But it is when it is in that rough hard times, those difficult conversations, and those times when you're figuring out, okay, do we raise our voice and yell at each other in this argument, or do we just kind of take some time and gather our emotions together, gather our thoughts together, and come back and speak in a way that both of you can hear each other's side of the argument. So those are all things that we've learned, and I feel like we've done a really good job of that, to where we don't yell at each other, but we have a conversation, and I say have a conversation, but it's intense.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's not like, oh well, you were just saying these little things. It's like, no, we're saying some hard things to each other, but I'm giving you time to speak, and you're giving me time to speak, and sometimes we don't agree. A lot of times we don't agree with each other, but trying to figure out like, okay, how do we move on from here? What's the solution, and how are we going to solve this? And sometimes it's solved and sometimes it's not solved.
Yeah.
So those things, I think we had some tough lessons in that early in our marriage. And I think we learned from premarital counseling about, not yelling and and allowing each other to speak.
Yeah. That really quickly, one, I just think about the commandment of love, right? And that I remember early in our marriage as well. That was also a shift for me in understanding that Jesus commanded us to love. He did not say, okay, go with your feelings and then decide if you need to love, right? It was a commandment. And so for us, it was taking that practice, doing those things. It's a verb in taking the actions in order to love. Something else here is the listening part of the communication, right? We talk about that, I think, quite a bit, but I remember specifically coming home, right? And you coming home, and we're sitting on the couch, and we start talking, and you're sharing with me all the things that, are going on with you. And in my mind, I am like, solving all these problems as you are sharing everything. I'm solving all these problems in my head. And then as soon as you finish talking, I'm going to give you the solutions to your life so you can go back to work and you can knock it out of the park. Right? You remember those conversations?
Of course, yes.
And it was like, no, I don't want you to solve my problems. That was a big sort of hurdle for me. And I think a lot of guys go through that. You solutions oriented, and you want to just fix things and move to the next thing. But that listening part was very interesting.
I don't think, well, most women, what they say, how many words women speak and then how many words men speak. We just want to get things off of our chest, not to come up with a solution, like you said, because in my head I already got what I need to have figured out. But I'm just be like, baby, can you imagine? Guess what? And I just want to tell you what happened, not so much for the thing. But for me, that is more of like, let me tell you all the details of what happened in my world today, so that way you can know, but not to solve the problems for me. And I think, yes, that was something early. And then yes, we did have to say, hey, I don't I don't want your
Then what are we talking about? What is this?
What you come telling me for? I'm like, I'm just talking. That's all. I got to get my words out,
Oh.
I didn't say enough words today at work, and I had to come home and share. I got 10,000 words to tell you right now within the next hour, so sit down. I got a lot to say.
Oh, wow. That is good. So I think about so that's really important. We talk about the communication side, right? We talk about, our different habits coming in to into the relationship. Is there anything else that kind of stood out to you real quick as we, move towards wrapping up?
I think, within the first 2 years, we took some time to travel, before kids came. And that was important for us because that's something that we still do, traveling, and took a mission trip, went to Europe. And so before kids came, we really took some time to spend with each other, and again, figuring out each other's weaknesses and strengths, and being away from your everyday life, that was helpful for us to get to know each other. So even in those moments of traveling, we had some rough conversations too. So traveling is, even though you in the honeymoon or out of the honeymoon phase, traveling helps you to see, each other's quirks, I guess, and trying to learn. Like when you're sitting in a car for hours, everything won't be,
Right.
roses and berries, so. So just learning each other during those first 2 years was really, really important.
Yeah, that's really good. I think the sooner that we can get to, below the surface, and travel, I think, is one of those things. Tough conversations. It's also one of those things that allow us to do that. And we got a lot of opportunity to do that in marriage, especially if you're planning to go into this next level of your relationship, whether you're planning a family, right? I think you need to establish some really good foundations. And in order to have those foundations, you have to get some really tough conversation. You have to really understand who you're working with today to get to that next phase.
Yes, because it's a war zone out there.
It's a war zone.
With the person that you married
And
to.
you got my 6 or what? Like, you got to know.
Oh my goodness. Well, this has been great. So we appreciate everyone joining us for this conversation today about when the honeymoon phase is over within the first couple years of marriage.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you all for listening. And if you have any thoughts that you want to share about those first few years of marriage, and any questions as well, we'd love to hear those. So thanks again for joining Relationships and Reason. We'll see you soon.